Thanks for joining us and welcome to the first Kansas Next Gen 911 user group meeting for 2024. As usual, feel free to pop things in the chat, even, come off mute and ask your question if you'd like. This is a very casual webinar. So however, if you need to communicate with us or want to raise a question or anything, feel free to chat or just take yourself off mute and ask your question. We're going to follow the usual agenda today, which is I'll cover project updates, and then Will Trimble is going to cover the latest news with the Next Gen 911 toolbox. And then after that, Will and I are going to split the slides on any GM-SAG and training updates. Sherry Massey was not able to join us today. She's gotten, as you know, she's now the GIS technical lead for the 911 project under the desk umbrella, but she gets pulled in all sorts of different directions now. So she wasn't able to join us, but she provided some content she wanted us to cover today. So we'll make sure we cover that during our webinar. All right. So to get things started, I'd like to give, kind of general project updates to everyone. The first thing is just an update on the Kansas hosted solution. Not much has changed, at least from the GIS standpoint, since the last time we talked. Just a reminder that all of the PSAPs across Kansas are now either on the Kansas hosted solution or on the MARC regional system. So that means if you're making a 911 call, whether you're in Brown County or Clark County or, Cheyenne County, wherever you're on the state, all those PSAPs are on the hosted solution, meaning they're all using the same rapid deploy radius call handling mapping software. So they're all using the same map that we host at DASC, which is of course generated from your GIS data submissions and through, we create map services and web map, things like that, that are used within radius. So I think that's very exciting, know that MARC has their own hosted solution and map they use, but as y'all know, they still contribute their data and submit their data as part of the statewide solution. So whether on the hosted solution or not, we have statewide data seamlessly across the state, thanks to your participation. So I jokingly say that because I used to always show the map of the status of who's on what, but now that it's either hosted solution or MARC, I'm not going to show that map anymore. And of course, MARC is just, there's 6 counties over in the Kansas City area that are on the MARC region. It ranges from Atchison in the north all the way down to Lynn County on the south, right along the state border. So those are the counties that are in the MARC regional system. So as far as just general updates, call handling solution, of course, we use Rapid Deploy's Radius. It was upgraded to version 5 back in November of 2023. A lot of that was really behind the scenes administrative controls. There were upgrades on that version, but there were some additions to the telecommunicators, so the dispatcher, some additional tools they can use. And one of them that I've heard about a lot has been very popular is the telecommunicators now have the option to do map markups. So they've always asked for the option. It's great to have all this authoritative data ready for them to view, the roads, the road labels, the address points, railroad crossings, parcel boundaries, owner names, all sorts of good stuff. But they've always had the need to be able to make some marks on the map, whether they're tracking a control burn or a wildfire or an unscheduled event like a road being blocked or things like that. So one of the most interesting ones I heard of recently, it's super interesting how creative they are with those. When that big snowstorm came through in January, I know Rice County and I feel like some others use map markups to mark where cars had slid off the road or had been stranded, so that they could mark on the map that they knew that the car had been checked. So if someone else came along, like, okay, fire department checked and that car had been checked, they can move on. They know everyone's safe and there's no one in the car. If another emergency vehicle or someone else came by and said, hey, do you know about this car off the road, at this highway, whatever, they could check their map to say, oh yeah, we know that one with the right description has been checked. So really cool stuff. I think that they're able to not only use all the data you provide and maintain, but then also make some minor marks on the map that are just temporary. They go away, there's an expiration on them, but can help in a situation where you really need to kind of keep track of an important event like cars off the road. So that's pretty cool. Just an update on the Kansas GIS data submissions. Of course, you guys are doing fantastic, and we're always the envy of the nation, we joke. Just to give you kind of an idea of what changes come through, last quarter we ended up with, we kind of tracked this really kind of by county, but 99 changes came through. So they had some sort of change. You guys submitted something, had changed in your data, but then we had 8 PSAPs that had submitted no changes. So always the vast majority have changes, but we still do have some areas that, you know, just don't have any changes for that quarter, and that's totally acceptable as well. In other project news, so for data, as you know, of course, the 911 data is extremely popular. So for those of you that approved allowing your address points to go public, which was 81 of you, we went ahead and made those available in the DASC Hub. And they're also available through the National Address Database, which is used, I think, you know, quite extensively by federal agencies and everyone to pull that authoritative data. And then also we've getting ready to process a request that we still in the queue to convert also the 911 road center lines to public domain. And 89 of you have approved that. So we'll also be soon making that available through the hub. We found that there's quite a few of you that in the hub you had said, mark the option of approve this in all data request. So this was a nice way for us to say, hey, if you're just cool with it going public, let's put it on the hub so people can get a hold of it. We're going to make sure that data is updated periodically as the data is submitted and updated. And that way people can find that data there. But then for those of you that still want anyone that's requesting data to come back to them for an agreement or whatever reasons, they certainly can still request that data through the portal, just like we've always handled it. And you can determine, you know, how they contact you or how that's handled through the portal. So it's exciting. The other great thing about the data that's going to be public is we have shared that before with Google. And so we're going to get on some sort of regular iteration with them because they have a portal where you can upload data for them to integrate. So we've done that once. We did it statewide, and it took them a really long time to update that data. But I think if we do it more frequently, hopefully they'll continue to update and find those changes and update the data. Because we hear about that a lot. Like, you know, as much as we have the authoritative data in the 911 system, everything, people still grab their phones, you know, and navigate to some address. And I'm sure the public tells you when they can't find an address or a location. So I think that was help improve data quality and accuracy everywhere with that information. So again, you'll be able to find on the DASC Hub site pretty soon, and you can already find the 81 PSAPs that approved the address points on the DASC Hub at this time. In other exciting news is we're going to get new statewide imagery, which we love, this every 3-year refresh. So we're due for flights to take place here pretty soon. We actually have a meeting with Surdex on Friday to talk about particulars, but man, the weather seems to be cooperating, and that's always the biggest issue. So as long as it continues to cooperate, it's just a matter of ground conditions being at the right point, you know, no snow cover or anything, and then also the sun angle being at the right point, which we don't get to until at least late February. And then Surdex can get some planes in the air and start acquiring that new imagery. So it'll be the same resolution as previous acquisitions. We acquired in the winter, so it's leaf off. It'll be 1-foot resolution, natural color. And as always, whether they're flying it now or you decide, you know, later, local biops are always still an option. So if you have a need to have some imagery flown at a different resolution, we have a lot of counties that get their cities flown in 6 or 3-inch resolution. You can take advantage of the agreement we have in place with Surdex and work with them to get some pricing to get that done. The other big news with that is, as usual, I rely on you guys for helping QA the imagery because it's statewide. We don't know if we'll get the whole state collected all in 2024, but whatever we do, we'll need to QA, even if it's just half the state. So I'll be reaching out again to all of my data maintainers and contacts across the state, especially for your area, to see if you'll help me. And it's, for those of you who've never done it, it's through an interface, a web interface, and you get assigned an area. The imagery's, it kind of has a grid laid on it, and you go through and look at it. You're looking for anything that looks like a warp in the imagery, like a bridge or something, or just something that doesn't look right, or maybe there's excessive smoke coverage, or anything that really should be addressed. We have our QA people go through and help us, and that is, we always brag about this too. Surdex says we're one of the few states that literally checks all the imagery, because we have such a tremendous amount of help doing that. There's no way Will and I and the other staff could do all that QA. So we really appreciate your help. So more coming on that, which probably won't be until toward the end of the year, because by the time they collect the data, process it, get it ready for us to QA, you know, it takes a few months to get through all that. So I'm guessing more like late summer, fall sometime, we'll be in contact to ask you if you'd like to help. So really excited about the imagery. And the next big update is in regards to something called the Lightning app. So I don't know if many of you have heard of this. It's an additional application that the Coordinating Council has purchased through Rapid Deploy. And essentially, the Lightning app is the mobile phone version of the radius mapping. So it's for use for our responders in the field to be able to see call locations and other responders in the field just on their mobile phone through this mapping application. So at this point, it is just being tested by certain pilot agencies in Kansas. They're all across the state. It's just, a handful of agencies. And we're kind of working out the, getting some feedback, working out the details of how it works, or how they expect it to work, and getting feedback. So we've got a great line of communication with Rapid Deploy and their developers. So it's been really interesting to see this application kind of evolve to this point. Right now, the version 1.0 now includes the ability to change in the background the Esri base maps. And sometime this spring, we'll be able to pull in actually the Kansas base map that's used in Radius will also be available in this Lightning mobile application. So we're really excited about that, that the local authoritative data will be available. It's a question that we've getting asked a lot, like how can the first responders get their hands on that map, on that great map? So this will be just another version of the radius mapping specific for the mobile application Lightning that the first responders will be able to use. It is available to all first responders in the state, but of course there's an agreement that make sure their agency and PSAPs are interested, and there'll be a lot more coming on this once the pilot phase of this project is completed. We're kind of just in the middle of the pilot, so probably closer to summertime will be when there'll be a lot more information on reaching out really to the PSAPs to see if they're interested, and then information on getting it deployed to the responders that want to use it, and then more information about interacting with the map and everything. So it's very exciting though to have this mobile version really of the radius map for responders to use in the field. So lots more to come on that. Okay, with that, I will hand it over to Will to cover the toolbox.
Thanks, Eileen, and good afternoon, everybody. And yeah, Eileen, if you're ready for the next one, good to go. Yeah, so we're looking at trying to get a new release next quarter that will include the official Python 3 ArcGIS Pro support. We've had some discussions internally on kind of how we would like to do that release and what that'll look like. So I think the initial Pro release, excuse me, will be released alongside with our traditional Python 2 version. So you'll have a stripped down Pro version that's going to include basically just the validation and submission tools that will allow you to submit data through the 911 portal. And we'll then continue to review the current Python 2 tools, see which ones we want to convert over to Python 3, deprecate a few of those, and probably create just a deprecated toolbox repository on GitHub where you can still access some of those if you need them. But really the main goal on that is just to make sure we have backwards compatibility for everyone who's currently using Python 2 for as long as is necessary. I know Esri is moving everything towards Pro and Python 3, but as you're probably used to in your PSAP or your office, some of your vendors or other places can be kind of slow to make an adjustment as well. So we're just trying to make sure that everybody can use the tools in their environment and be able to get our data up to the portal. I think right now it's a pretty small list of things that we're finishing up that include the differences between the attribute assistant and attribute rule sets that are not backwards compatible. And then there's a few differences in some of the Python that have to do with some of the date fields, the ability to check the version on GitHub. And but there's nothing minor, nothing major right now. There are people who are using Pro and submitting in Python 2, and I think the only real major hurdle that we've seen is if you're using the attribute rules in Pro, you have to remove those before you submit in Python 2 right now. So when we switch it over in the other direction, we just want to make sure that same kind of compatibility is there. So and then along with that, while we're releasing a new version and getting into Python 3, just going through and updating and refreshing all that documentation. So right now, our current documentation consists of information on GitHub in a text file. There are text files that come with the toolbox, and then the toolbox itself inside ArcMap or ArcPro has got tooltips. So just trying to update and refresh those. Some of them don't have much information, so it's just including more information with that. Other ones is doing some updating and just a facelift on some of the visuals of that. And then we're going to add a new training format on the web via Esri Story Map that'll just have a different level of accessibility and maybe a little bit more fleshed out than you get in a text document visually. And just kind of a little bit of reboot on some of that documentation. That's always good to do every few years once it gets done initially. So that's the main toolbox as it relates to Python and ArcGIS Pro. And then there are a couple bug fixes to include in there related to the new address point UM-SAG comparison. William Wallace with Ellis had an issue that we looked at together with the ESM boundaries that's correctable. And then I recently talked to Drew as well and had an issue with some of the flagging that I'm not 100% sure if it's the toolbox issue or not. So we're just kind of investigating that and making sure that that doesn't need to have another fix in there. It was related to a road center line that was not for submission, but was still causing some overlap issues with something that was flagged as an address point UM-SAG. So we did get that worked out for a submission, but just something to go back and look at it if necessary. That will also be included in the next version. And kind of a future release has been here for a little while, mostly because we haven't quite made the PSP transition yet. But we're going to modify one of the existing MSAG tools to work with the new PSP system, and we'll talk about that a little bit further on in the slides. But it'll be an on-demand version of something that you'll likely, if you have any issues, get a weekly report from us about your data and the processing in the MSAG via PSP. But the toolbox also now has the ability to check your 911 net PM list versus your address points. And so we also want to take that same functionality and move it into the new system. So that's kind of what that's related to. And that's it for what I have for the toolbox. Again, there's a story map available that has more details about each each toolbox release, as well as the previous version. So you can reference that anytime if you want a little bit more information about what errors were present, what changes were made, what updates we made, and why we made them. That stuff's all available in that GIS toolbox story map, and you can get to it via the Dask Hub and the Coordinating Council's website. Yeah, and so moving into the GeoMSAG and training updates, like Elite said, we're filling in for Sherry today, so I'll do my best to fill the big shoes there. But yeah, the last one of our newer features is the map discrepancy reporting and radius. We are getting a pretty steady number of reports. So it's good to see that people are using it and finding some uses for reporting issues. Obviously, we don't want to see any issues. It'd be great if we never did, but the fact that people are using it is a good sign. So we get issues with the locally maintained GIS data. So these are their address corrections and road name issues. And then also problems with the mapping services. That's if a layer is not working or it's not updating or you're not seeing what you think you should be seeing in a layer or in the mapping solution in general. We do get some reports still, and we're working on training with PSAPs on how the location technology works and how that information presents itself in the map. Trying to reduce reports that are related to the telephone technology, the telephone system, and aren't really GIS related reports or issues with the data that is in the MSAG. So we do get kind of some false positive reports that we're able to pass on still, but they're not necessarily what the goal of the map discrepancy reporting is, which is to just report on MSAG and GIS issues. So we continue to kind of work on separating those two issues out. But overall, I think it's been a pretty successful implementation, and we appreciate you all continuing to use it and help your dispatchers and other people fix any errors that they might come across while they're using the Radius interface. And yeah, so I guess on the data model updates, the Kansas data model version 3 is, I guess, officially complete at this point. We've done some internal reviews. We had a committee review and I guess sort of a public comment review for changes. We've reviewed all those changes and updated our model. The key kind of takeaways for everybody are that there aren't really any specific maintenance requirements for our PSAPs. We're going to reorganize a few things and reprioritize some layers. There's going to be some additional appendices with new information. Some of it's reference information, some of it's new data, naming systems or things that relate to the next bullet point down, which is the NINA model. But basically, it's not anything that's going to affect your regular data maintenance practices. There'll be some things on the back side that we may add some additional fields or change the name of a few fields to comply with NINA, et cetera. But that's stuff that'll be on the backside processing that we take your data that's submitted and just massage it a little bit to get it into the MSAG and send it along to the necessary agencies. So there'll be a new document coming out with that, and that'll be available in the same places. And we may have maybe a change log or something that we put together as well to share with you to kind of highlight what's changed and make it easy to see what the differences are between version 2 and version 3. And then along the similar vein, the NINA NG911 GIS data model version 3 is ongoing. Sherry's involved with that on a regular basis. They're getting pretty close for what they do progress-wise. It's a little bit slow with the national system, but she's hoping towards the end of this year that'll be ready. And at this time, we don't have any major changes we foresee that is going to affect our local maintainers in Kansas. So we tried to use Sherry's inside knowledge on that system to kind of make sure we had an idea of what was coming. So in version 3, we had our bases covered on our data model as well. So I think that's it for model updates. And I'll hand it back to Eileen for a minute.
Okay, thank you, Will. Just had a question in the chat that I thought I might bring up for everyone. Just sort of have a little side discussion here. So I had the question saying, oh, I was wondering about imagery that was gonna be available, that was 2023 acquisition. So yeah, the 911 imagery, is renewed every 3 years. So our last acquisition was 2021, and that's what we're flying, gonna be acquiring in 2024. But just as a side note, DASC does have the, FSA NAPE 2023, county mosaic SID files available for download through the DASC hub. And we have created a service out of that, but we've found some issues with the imagery. So we're waiting to get some new files from NRCS before we add that service to any applications like Orca or any other applications out there. So you might be wondering like, oh, wow, why can't I see that new NAPE imagery in Orca or elsewhere? And that's why we found that there's some speckling and some other issues with the imagery. So we're waiting to get the actual geotiffs. Those are a lot better source to create imagery services off of. And once we have that and make sure it's in good shape, we'll be adding that to services. But that would be, again, the 2023 NAPE that I can't remember. I think it's 1 meter resolution. And it is, those are flown during the summer. So that's leaf on, more for agricultural purposes. So not 911 related, but just, we're so lucky we get a lot of imagery. So it's hard to keep track of what imagery we have and when it's coming out and where it'll be and everything. So, so that's update on that. So yeah, with the acquisition of the 911 imagery, we'll see what we get acquired Q8 in the fall, and then integrate that as the imagery becomes available into the call handling mapping system and as well as other applications. But that won't be till at least the following year. So it takes time to get the process in Q8 and everything. Okay, so enough of my sidetracking here. All right, so switching back to training, we will continue to offer the standard GIS data maintainer training as a pre-conference workshop at CAM. And again, that you don't have to register. You have to register for the workshop. You don't have to pay to go to the conference to come to this pre-conference session. So it's a great collaboration with CAM. And as always, if there's anything specific you'd like covered in that, feel free to reach out to myself or Will or Sherry, because we're kind of in maintenance mode now, but it's always good to go over things that we might think, oh, everyone's got that or not. But if there's anything you think of that you think you'd like us to cover more in depth or revisit or anything, please always reach out and let us know for that. Kind of in concert with that, there's also the Kansas 911 Coordinating Council Learning Management System. And I've received some questions about that because that system is used to train telecommunicators, PSAP administrators. That's kind of like the whole 911 ecosystem for training on the hosted solution. I think a lot of you, or all of you, were getting some non-GIS related training email reminders, maybe specific to you need to take security training or something like that. They have now gone in and separated the GIS stewards and maintainers into a separate group. So hopefully you won't be getting any training that doesn't apply to you, any reminders anymore. So sorry that you're getting those for a while. You can just disregard them. And we'll make sure that from now on, or hopefully do our best to make sure that from now on, any training emails you get from LMS or us is specific to GIS. Of course, if you also are a PSAP administrator or serve some other role, well, then you continue to get those depending on your role. But for GIS specific, we're trying to get those real targeted. So it's not confusing. You get an email and be like, well, what is this? Do I have to take this training? So we'll make sure that that's kind of more focused from now. Okay, and I guess on the learning management system, currently there is a GIS steward training class, because that one's pretty standard, doesn't have to change a lot for any new GIS stewards out there. The plan is eventually to have kind of a intro to what, being a GIS maintainer class on the LMS, in addition to offering the GIS maintainer class as a pre-conference workshop at CAM. So eventually we'll have more training out there. It's just, getting the time to do that. But hopefully what training notifications you get, they will be specific to GIS going forward. Okay, with that, I'll hand it back to Will.
All right. So yeah, to finish it up, just some on the horizon updates, kind of training wise and UMSeg wise. So we're gonna offer some additional training soon for GIS maintainers on the use of the PSP platform. So when we make that transition from Intrado's platform to PSP's platform, there will be some initial training via AT&T on how to use their UI. It's not going to be specific to our needs. It'll just be their general training modules. And then we will offer some specific training about using PSP in the Kansas GIS program. And that'll be some kind of recorded webinar, most likely from Sherry. And we'll make that available. And then on the kind of bigger news, we hope to start migrating to the live system in the next few months. And that's going to be a county at a time kind of process. What kind of speed that's going to be like, we're not sure. We're going to have to just migrate the first couple, see how that goes. And if things go smoothly, it could be a relatively quick process. And if there's some stuff to iron out from the first couple counties, then that may be delayed a few months, and then it'll kind of pick up towards the end and be much quicker. And so the big part of that is as that migration starts happening, we'll get some training out for how to use a new system, and we will also be providing you with some more reporting, which cover on the next slide. So part of that reporting will be that PSP has provided us feedback from the processing of our data into their system. And we're going to generate a new email report to provide to our maintainers. And the bulk of that report now is a comparison of your current address points against the current TN database. So you'll be able to get a kind of a weekly live view of any records that they have in their system that you don't have an address point for. So that could be that you have a missing address point, or it could be that something in their database is incorrect and needs to be changed. But that's similar to the toolbox item we were talking about before, where you're able to check the TN information against your address points. We'll be providing kind of a weekly report of that straight from PSP in their system as they process your data. So that'll be a big change, but it'll be a pretty straightforward process as far as what you've seen in the past and how you've done your original data migration. It'll be a similar process to just looking at address points and doing some troubleshooting to see if you need to add them or change something on the TN side. And while we're sending out some new reports, we're also going to distribute some information from our crash mapping project team. They've been working with the road centerline alias tables specific to the KDOT highway system. And they've got some suggested edits and some new documentation released kind of about what their project is, how it uses the 911 data, and what that impact has on you. We had a presentation on CAM 2 years ago that we can also distribute that kind of talked a little bit about what that crash mapper project looks like, how they use the 911 data. That's probably something I should have put in the slide, but if somebody is interested in it, they can reach out to Eileen or myself, and we can send you that slideshow. And yeah, so there'll just be some new information coming out along with that. Generally, it's either just some additions that you need here or there that you may have a missing highway segment. There were a couple counties that had some missing data that they've filled in for you, but generally the information they're providing is a complete replacement or kind of plug and play information for your alias table that if PSAP's willing to work with them, it makes their life a lot easier and improves the accuracy of the crash mapping system. So that's something we'll be including along with those new PSP reports, and trying to package all your maintenance edits kind of at one time so that you're not getting hit with a couple different maintenance items at different times. So and that's it on the data side.
Okay, thank you, Will. I'm watching the chat for questions. I don't see anything new coming up, but if you think of something, like I said, unmute or put your question in the chat. So with that, really just to wrap up, we will continue our outreach and training through the user group webinars every quarter, and that standard practice of once the recording's ready and the slides are packaged up, I put those out on the Dask Hub site, which is listed there, and we also list them on the Kansas 911 Coordinating Council's website. So if I always say that in my email, if you can't join us or want to review something later, the slides and recording should be out there on both of those websites. Again, we'll have GIS Data Maintainer at a pre-conference workshop at CAM this year, and then also expose any new additional training would be done through the Kansas 911 Coordinating Council Learning Platform. Let's see here. It looks like we got a question. The question is the mention of ability for feedback to Esri base maps. Does the state have any pull to feedback to TomTom, Google Maps, etc.? So we do. We have submitted for those counties or PSAPs that approved it. We have submitted the 911 road data to Google for them to integrate. When we did that, we did it statewide, and it took them about a year to complete that integration. But yeah, anything, especially that's public domain, it's going to make it a lot easier for Here Map or TomTom or Google, or, you know, insert your navigation vendor here name to be able to pull that information. And so whether they come grab it from us or we try to provide it to them, we are trying to always coordinate and get that data out there and shared. Let's see here. There's another question. Tina, I'll reach back with you to make sure. We probably, I'm guessing if you were approving requests all along, you probably have approved the request, but I'll double check. So I'll follow up with you as needed to see if you did approve that request. Okay, Wilson. And there's a few counties, and they may not be, I don't know who else on the call here, but there's some that we gave you the option early on in the data approval to approve all future requests or deny all future requests. We try to watch those, especially on the deny, because sometimes personnel change or your, you know, a desire of how you want that data distributed is changed. So we want to make sure, you know, if you're denying all, you want to continue to do that, and we'll respect that and do that. But if you ever want to change that, just contact us and we can change the setting so that you can either approve or deny as they come in, or switch it to approve all if you'd want to do that. So kind of have it set up that we can handle really any scenario for data request coming through. Okay, with that, any other questions? Or Will, can you think of anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, I don't think anything else on my side. I get just on Noah's question a little bit. There is depending on what kind of scale of the issue you're looking at, there is the I believe it's gps.gov website that has some interfaces for reaching out to the different entities of data to submit changes. So if it happens to be like an incorrect address point or a bad routing or some other thing, there's some tools there that you can use to kind of do that as well.
Yeah, that was kind of the direction I was asking. And I know that's a lot of this is separate from the public side, obviously, but we get all the time people going, well, that's not what Google Maps says my road is. And then, you know, we go down that argument. But I've already tried to feed back to Google Maps and TomTom, and both entities are nearly impossible to get anyone that will actually receive feedback from any government agency. So that's why I was asking, is to see if you guys had any pull over that.
Yeah, we like with Google, we do enter the portal, but we do have a kind of a direct relationship with Here, as well as Google through Ken Nelson, who's the state GIO. He's actually currently the president-elect of NSGIC, the National States Geographic Information Council. And so through our relationships with that particular organization, they have business partnerships with Google, Here, TomTom, like every navigation company you can think of. So yeah, if we have specific concerns, and we do, anytime we get in front of those companies, we do bring up like, you need to integrate our changes. Rural areas are just as important as urban areas, you know, all of these things. But if there's ever something specific you think we could help you with, feel free to reach out to Will or I, and we can certainly try to find a contact for you or reach out on your behalf too. So.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then if no one's got another question, I did have kind of a follow-up one. If you're saying with the Lightning app that there was options for groups that are out there to submit changes on the fly, or at least that was something planned. I just want to make sure that there's an approval type process for that. Because again, we get kind of the same thing with like local SOs that or local police departments that don't necessarily know their own roads. And like, oh no, that's not that road, that's this road. It's like, well, just because somebody threw up a street sign doesn't make it an actual road, if the county doesn't recognize it. So I was gonna see, is there an approval process for that?
Yeah, so it kind of, I think we're kind of mixing a couple different things here. The Lightning application, which is the mobile app, will allow responders to view and interact with the map, but they won't submit any map discrepancy reports or have really any map feedback mechanism unless they went back to the telecommunicators and said, hey, I see something wrong with this road. Can you submit it for me? So the responders themselves in the field won't be submitting that. Those come just directly from the telecommunicators sitting in the Peace app that would submit.
Okay, that's what I'd be worried about is too many
Yeah.
people that don't know the actual right answer trying to make changes.
Yeah, and those reports are just, hey, I see a problem here. And then like Will talked about, we review it, we pass it on to the GIS maintainer if it's, well, they get copied if it's a map discrepancy report. And then oftentimes it's not even a GIS related issue. But maintainers should be copied, and if it is, then we kind of, go down that road and work with the maintainer on what the issue, if it's data or if it's something else, on getting that resolved. So yeah, nothing gets changed unless it's the maintainer and the steward saying it should be changed. So.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
All right, good questions. Any other questions? All right, we appreciate the discussion. So yeah, I guess just to reiterate, we don't change anyone's data. That's up to you guys. We just make sure it passes the data model and the validation tools and fits in with the I3 and NINA standards and all that. But yeah, you guys are the authoritative source on the data for sure. So. Okay, well, with that, thanks for joining today. As usual, feel free to reach out to Will, myself, or Sherry if you have any other questions, and I will post the slides and the recording once it's ready on the website. I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.